All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about maybe the most important and honestly the most overlooked part of any project, the very end. We're going to break down how you properly close out your work, make it completely audit-proof, and then use everything you learn to get even better next time. Let's get to it.
So let me just ask you this right off the bat. When is a project really over? I mean, is it the second that last task gets checked off, or maybe when the final invoice is paid? The real answer might surprise you.
A project is only, and I mean only, truly finished when you've closed the loop. See, think about it this way. Leaving a project with loose ends, unverified payments, missing documents, that's like leaving the front door of your house wide open. It's just a huge risk. Closing the loop means you're locking that door, securing all the value you just created, and protecting the business.
Now, to get this right, we've got a roadmap with 5 key stops. We'll start with what I call the project's final mile, to really understand why this all matters. Then we'll build out a verification checklist. After that, we're going to construct our audit shield, handle the official closing and archiving, and finally, we'll talk about sharpening the process for every project that comes next. So let's start with that first step, the project's final mile. It's so easy to think of project closure as just a bunch of boring admin work, right? But that last 10% of effort, that's what secures the first 90%. This isn't just about being done. It's about finishing strong and protecting everything you've already built.
So what's the big deal with an open loop anyway? Well, it's a massive business risk. We're talking about failed audits, big compliance headaches, financial messes, even legal trouble down the road. All of those things can completely torpedo a successful project long after you thought you were done. That's why closing that loop is absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay, so how do we actually start closing that loop? Well, it all begins here in Section 2 with the verification checklist. You can think of this as a super systematic, really meticulous review that the team lead runs to make sure every single piece of the project is buttoned up. No stone left unturned.
In this process, it breaks down into 3 pretty simple steps. First, the team lead just gets that bird's eye view, monitoring the overall project status. Then, they dive deep, verifying every single task isn't just marked complete, but is actually approved. And finally, they follow the money, confirming every single payment is processed and done. It's a sequence that's designed to make sure nothing gets missed.
Now here's where it gets really smart. This isn't about just looking in one place and calling it a day. The team lead has to confirm all the task approvals in the task manager and then pivot over to the expense tracker to confirm the payments. It's this cross-referencing, this double check that really guarantees nothing slips through the cracks.
So once everything's been verified, we move on to our next section, building the audit shield. This is where we gather up all the documentation that protects the project, and frankly, the whole company, from any questions that might pop up later. Don't think of it as filing paperwork. Think of it as building a compliance fortress.
And if you're wondering why, well, it's written right into our policy. Maintain complete and accurate project records for audit purposes. That's not a friendly suggestion, It's a core directive. It makes this kind of careful record keeping absolutely fundamental. So what are the bricks in this audit shield? They're these critical documents right here. Specifically, you need proof of withholding tax deduction. You need evidence from your vendor that VAT has been remitted. And sometimes, you'll need a simple acknowledgement from the vendor that they got paid. These are your key pieces of armor. And there's no mystery about where these important documents should live. The critical evidence can be stored in a few key places. Write in an email, inside the expense tracker, or even attached to a task in the task manager. The most important thing is that they are stored, they're accessible, and they're linked to the project. Okay, verification is done. Our audit shield is built. Now we get to the official part. Section 4, closing and archiving. This is the final handshake. This is the moment we officially lock the records and declare the project 100% complete.
And that final handshake, it's really a team effort with super clear roles. The team lead does all the prep work. They verify everything and put in the formal request to close. Then, management steps in, does one last review of the whole package, and gives that final official approval. It's a critical 2-part system that ensures total oversight.
And this whole process moves with a pretty steady rhythm. The goal is this. Once verification is done on day 1, you should have all your compliance documents secured by day 2. You request approval on day 3, with the project being formally closed by day 5. And then finally, everything has to be archived within 10 days. It's a clear, measurable timeline to keep things moving.
And that brings us to our final section, sharpening the process. This is where we get really smart. See, closing a loop isn't just about ending one project. It's about gathering all the data and intelligence to make the next project run even smoother.
Which brings us to the topic of audits. We have to change how we think about them. They aren't a threat to be afraid of. They're a tool. An audit is basically a health check, making sure our process is as strong and as compliant as we think it is. Honestly, it's a huge opportunity to learn and get better.
So, what does success really look like? Well, the standard couldn't be clearer. The target for the entire process is 100% compliance with evidence requirements, not 99%, 100. The goal is absolute completeness for every single task we close.
And just to hammer that point home, the target for any missing WHT or VAT documents is 0. A flat 0. This zero-tolerance approach is what gives the Audit Shield its strength. It's the ultimate sign of a properly closed loop.
So I'll just leave you with this one last thought. Forget about your scheduled reviews and your planned check-ins. The real question you should be asking yourself is this: is your process solid enough to handle a surprise audit tomorrow? If the answer is yes, then you haven't just finished another project. You've truly and securely closed the loop.